The fall from grace. What drives a man to abandon everything he once believed in? To trade his moral compass for survival in the shadows? Tonight, we explore the story of Marcus Chen, a brilliant security engineer whose single moment of weakness destroyed not just his life, but transformed him into something he never thought he could become. Marcus had it all. A prestigious position designing home security systems for one of the country's leading companies. A loving wife, Jennifer. A baby daughter on the way. The American dream made manifest in their suburban home with its pristine lawn and sparkling pool. He was living proof that hard work and intelligence could build the perfect life. But perfection, as Marcus would learn, is fragile. It was a winter evening in 2018 when Marcus met his old college friend Bobby Martinez at O'Malley's bar on 5th Street. Bobby seemed different that night, agitated, desperate. Over several rounds of whiskey, Bobby confessed his obsession with his ex-wife Sarah. She'd left him for another man, and Bobby couldn't let go. "I need to get into her house," Bobby said, his voice slurred with alcohol and desperation. "I need to confront that bastard who stole her from me." Marcus should have walked away. Should have recognized the dangerous territory they were entering. Instead, his alcohol-clouded judgment and inflated ego led him to share intimate details about residential security systems. How to bypass motion sensors. Which windows were typically the weakest points. How to disable alarm systems without triggering backup protocols. When Bobby slid $500 across the bar table that night, Marcus pocketed it without fully understanding what he'd just done. He'd sold his integrity for drinking money. The next morning brought sobering clarity, but it was too late. Bobby had already acted on Marcus's advice. Sarah Williams was found dead in her bedroom at 3:47 a.m., her throat slashed while she slept beside her new boyfriend. Bobby had broken in using Marcus's instructions, but what was supposed to be a confrontation had turned into something far more sinister. The boyfriend, awakened by the attack, fought back but couldn't save Sarah. Bobby fled, leaving behind a scene of unimaginable violence. Police arrested Bobby within 24 hours. Security footage from a nearby convenience store had captured his car in the area. When they searched his apartment, they found handwritten notes detailing the break-in plan, notes that included Marcus's security bypass methods. At his trial, facing life in prison, Bobby made a desperate plea bargain. He named Marcus as his accomplice, claiming the security engineer had not only provided the technical knowledge but had actively planned the break-in. Marcus's lawyer argued that his client had merely shared general information while intoxicated, never intending for it to be used in a crime. But the prosecution painted a different picture, a calculated conspiracy between two men to terrorize an innocent woman. The jury believed Bobby's version. Marcus Chen, once a respected professional with a bright future, was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for conspiracy and accessory to murder. His company fired him immediately. Jennifer filed for divorce before their daughter was born, taking the house and severing all contact. Prison changed Marcus in ways he couldn't have imagined. The man who entered those walls still believed in redemption, in second chances. The man who emerged 5 years later understood that society had no place for someone like him. No engineering firm would hire an ex-convict. No respectable company would take a chance on someone with his record. Marcus found himself living in a studio apartment in the city's worst neighborhood, working 10-hour shifts at a pizza delivery job that barely covered rent. But Marcus possessed something most desperate men didn't: expertise. Those same skills that had once protected homes could be turned to darker purposes. Late at night, in his cramped apartment, Marcus began to plan his new career. The question wasn't whether he would turn to crime. It was how quickly he could master it. 6 months after his release, Marcus Chen had become someone else entirely. The idealistic engineer was gone, replaced by a man who understood that survival meant embracing the shadows. His first job came through a Craigslist ad, a dangerous gamble that could have ended in arrest or worse. But desperation makes men reckless. A businessman needed compromising photos stolen from a private investigator's office. Photos that could destroy his marriage and his political career. Marcus spent 3 days studying the target building. He mapped patrol routes, identified security cameras, and analyzed the building's original blueprints from city records. When he finally made his move, it took less than 10 minutes to get in and out without triggering a single alarm. The rush was intoxicating. For the first time since prison, Marcus felt alive. Word spread through the criminal underground. The ex-security engineer who could break into anywhere. Soon, Marcus didn't need to advertise. Clients found him through networks of whispered recommendations. He stole industrial secrets from corporate offices. He retrieved blackmail material from safety deposit boxes. He recovered stolen property from heavily guarded warehouses. Each job built his reputation and his bank account. But Marcus remained careful. He carried an unregistered .357 revolver, not because he wanted to use it, but because the criminal world was unforgiving to those who appeared weak. Still, the thought of actually pulling that trigger made his stomach turn. He was a thief, not a killer. That changed on a December night when Marcus found a crimson envelope in his mailbox. There was no postmark, no return address. Just his apartment number written in elegant script and a golden Greek sigma symbol embossed on the red paper. Inside, Marcus found $500 bills and a white card with simple instructions. To the man who dwells in the shadows. House at 9596, Queenswood Avenue. Retrieve silver idol from master bedroom, second floor. Black Audi Q5 waiting in driveway at 1 a.m. tonight. 1% reward enclosed. 1% meant this job was worth $50,000, more than Marcus had made in his entire criminal career combined. But the mysterious nature of the offer sent warning signals through his mind. No client had ever contacted him this way. No one knew his exact address. Yet something about the envelope felt different from typical criminal enterprises. The paper was expensive, the writing professional. This wasn't some desperate criminal looking for help. This was something organized, well-funded, and carefully planned. Marcus weighed his options as he held the crisp bills. He could ignore the offer, stick to smaller jobs, and maintain his careful approach to crime. Or he could take the biggest risk of his life for the biggest reward. His ego made the decision for him. Someone had specifically chosen Marcus Chen for this job. Someone believed he was skilled enough to handle whatever waited at 9596, Queenswood Avenue. That night, Marcus loaded his equipment bag with his usual tools, lockpicks, flashlight, crowbar, and torch. He tucked the revolver into his jacket and drove toward an address that would change everything. As he parked 3 blocks away from Queenswood Avenue, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into something far more dangerous than a simple theft. The winter air bit at his face as he approached the target house, but the chill he felt had nothing to do with the weather. Something was wrong with this job. But $50,000 was $50,000. Inside the House of Horrors. 9596, Queenswood Avenue looked ordinary from the street, a 2-story colonial house with modest landscaping and a single-car garage. But as Marcus approached, details emerged that made his skin crawl. The master bedroom window on the second floor glowed with an unnatural pale light, not the warm yellow of normal interior lighting. The rest of the house sat in complete darkness. No movement, no signs of life except for that eerie glow. Marcus had broken into dozens of homes, but none had ever felt so wrong. He pried open the kitchen window with practiced ease, wincing at how the frame groaned in the cold air. Inside, the smell hit him immediately: stale food, unwashed bodies, and something else he couldn't identify. The house was a disaster. Trash covered every surface, clothes lay scattered across the floor, and empty bottles cluttered the counters. As Marcus crept toward the staircase, a hushed voice stopped him cold. Someone was talking in the downstairs bathroom, the door slightly ajar, no light visible inside. A young woman's voice, strained with fear: "No, Linda, I don't know what's happening to him. He comes home every day and trashes the living room, then just sits on the couch staring at nothing. When I ask what's wrong, he stares at me with this look of pure rage." Marcus pressed himself against the wall, listening. He moved the TV to his bedroom and locks the door when he leaves. When I try to get in, he gets violent. Last week he grabbed my hair and dragged me downstairs. He left bruises on my neck, Linda. I can't keep doing this. The woman was crying now, her voice barely audible. I know I should call the police, but I love him. He was there for me when Mom was sick. I can't just abandon him now. Maybe he'll get better. Maybe whatever's happening will pass. Marcus felt sick. He recognized the pattern: an abusive relationship escalating toward violence. But he couldn't get involved. This was supposed to be a simple theft. The woman ended her call, and Marcus heard soft sobbing from the bathroom. He used the sound to mask his footsteps as he climbed the stairs. The second floor was immaculate compared to the chaos below, but that only made it more unsettling. The hallway was too clean, too organized, as if someone had scrubbed away evidence of what happened here. The master bedroom door was locked, but Marcus could hear static coming from inside, the hiss and crackle of an old television. That pale light seeped around the doorframe like something out of a nightmare. Marcus picked the lock in seconds, his hand steady despite the growing dread in his chest. He eased the door open just wide enough to slip inside. The scene that greeted him defied explanation. A man sat in a desk chair with his back to the door, motionless as a statue. In front of him, an ancient television set displayed nothing but static, filling the room with that eerie pale glow Marcus had seen from outside. The static was deafeningly loud, but the man never moved, never reacted, as if hypnotized by the white noise. The room was destroyed. Garbage covered the floor so thickly that Marcus couldn't see the carpet. But it was the walls that made his blood run cold. Dozens of papers were pinned everywhere, covered in frenzied handwriting and crude drawings. Some had "killed a bitch" scrawled in what looked like dried blood. Others showed stick figure drawings of a woman in various degrading positions. The writing was erratic, manic, the work of someone who had completely lost touch with reality. On the desk beside the television sat two items that made Marcus's throat go dry: a rubber horse mask and an electric circular saw. In the far corner, on a nightstand beside an unmade bed, Marcus spotted his target, a silver sculpture of a woman in classical Greek style. Even in the television's pale light, it seemed to gleam with an inner radiance. Getting to the nightstand meant crossing 15 feet of debris-covered floor while staying silent enough not to alert the motionless man. Marcus had never felt more exposed or vulnerable. Step by careful step, he navigated the obstacle course of trash and empty bottles. The static from the television helped mask the small sounds he made, but every creak of the floorboards beneath the garbage sounded like a gunshot to his ears. Finally, Marcus reached the nightstand and grasped the silver idol. It was heavier than expected, and strangely warm to the touch. As he lifted it, the sculpture seemed to pulse with energy, as if it were alive. Marcus crouched behind the bed to catch his breath and plan his exit. That's when the man in the chair began to speak. His voice was a monotone mumble, repeating fragments of the conversation Marcus had overheard downstairs: "Gets violent, grabbed my hair, left bruises, can't call the police." Then, suddenly, the man's voice changed to a roar of rage: "Goddamn bitch." He slammed both fists on the desk so hard that the television jumped. Then he stood up, reached for the horse mask, and pulled it over his head. Marcus watched in horror as the man picked up the circular saw and headed for the door. The girlfriend downstairs had no idea what was coming for her. The night that changed everything. Time slowed to a crawl as Marcus watched the masked figure leave the bedroom. The circular saw's cord trailed behind him like a predator's tail as he descended the stairs with deliberate, mechanical steps. Marcus had two choices: escape through the window and let whatever was about to happen downstairs play out, or intervene and risk everything. The old Marcus, the engineer, the family man, would have called the police. But that man was gone, replaced by someone who understood that survival meant looking out for yourself first. Yet as Marcus moved toward the window, he heard the saw roar to life on the first floor. The woman's scream that followed was unlike anything he'd ever heard, pure terror and agony combined into a sound that would haunt him forever. It lasted only seconds before being cut short by an awful, wet silence. Marcus stood frozen at the window, the silver idol clutched in his trembling hands. He could escape now. The black Audi was waiting in the driveway below, ready to take him away from this nightmare with $50,000 in his pocket. But something inside him snapped. Marcus pulled out his revolver, a weapon he'd carried for months but never fired, and charged downstairs. He'd never killed anyone, barely knew how to properly hold a gun, but rage and adrenaline overrode his inexperience. He was too late. The woman lay in pieces in the bathroom, her beautiful face frozen in a final expression of terror. The killer stood over her remains, the saw still running in his hands, his breathing heavy and erratic behind the rubber mask. Marcus raised the gun with shaking hands and fired. The shots went wild, punching holes in the bathroom wall and mirror. The recoil nearly broke his wrist, but the sound got the killer's attention. The masked figure turned toward Marcus, and for a moment they stared at each other across the hallway. Then the killer's gaze fell on the silver idol in Marcus's left hand. Something changed in the killer's posture. He began to tremble, then let out an inhuman shriek of rage. The saw roared back to life as he lunged forward. Marcus barely dodged the spinning blade, feeling it tear through his jacket and slice into his right arm. Pain exploded through his body, but adrenaline kept him moving. He dropped the gun and pulled a hammer from his equipment bag. As the killer raised the saw for another attack, Marcus wrapped his good arm around the man's neck and began striking his head with the hammer's claw end. The first blow only punctured the rubber mask. The second cracked skull. The killer thrashed and flailed, but Marcus held on, striking again and again until the struggling stopped and the saw fell silent. When it was over, Marcus released the corpse and immediately vomited. He'd crossed a line he never thought he could cross, but somehow felt nothing except exhaustion. The black Audi was still waiting when Marcus stumbled outside. The rear door opened automatically, revealing a bald man with milky white cataracts covering both eyes. Despite his obvious blindness, he looked directly at Marcus as if he could see perfectly. "The idol of Erida," the man said in a crisp British accent. "Give it to me." Marcus handed over the sculpture without question. The man placed it carefully in a red crystal box, then produced a briefcase filled with cash. $49,500, the man said. "You kept the advance, I trust. You did excellent work tonight, Mr. Chen. That artifact has caused enough suffering." As the Audi drove through the empty streets, the man cleaned and bandaged Marcus's wound with surprising gentleness. "You saved more lives than you know," the man continued. "That idol has a way of corrupting those who possess it, amplifying their darkest impulses until they become something monstrous. The world is safer now." Marcus wanted to ask questions, but exhaustion had settled into his bones. When the car stopped at his apartment building, the man shook his hand. "Don't worry about the bodies or the investigation. I have associates in the police department who will ensure this matter is handled quietly. Spend the money well, Mr. Chen. You've earned it." Marcus never saw the mysterious client again, but that night changed him forever. The man who had once recoiled at the thought of violence had killed someone with his bare hands. The guilt and trauma should have destroyed him, but instead, it hardened him into something colder. In the months that followed, Marcus became the ruthless criminal he'd never thought he could be. When he witnessed injustice during other jobs, he simply looked away. When innocent people needed help, he kept walking. The memory of that bathroom, that masked killer, had burned away whatever remained of his conscience. The silver idol was gone, but its corruption lived on in the man who had held it. Marcus Chen had saved one life that night, but in doing so, he'd lost his own soul. Some mysteries leave us with more questions than answers. What was the idol of Erida? Who was the mysterious client who knew exactly where to find it? And what happens to a man when he discovers he's capable of things he never imagined? Thank you for following Marcus Chen's story to the end. If this case moved you, hit like and subscribe. We have more stories that deserve to be heard. Share your thoughts, your feelings, and your final theory in the comments below. Sometimes the most haunting mysteries are the ones that show us what we might become when pushed beyond our limits.